Hello and welcome to our panel DIY Short Film Distribution. My name is Anne Gaschütz. I am the co-director of Filmfest Dresden, a short film festival in Germany. And it also says Locarno Film Festival on there, which is true because I'm in the Party di Domani selection committee, so for the short films in Locarno as well. And I'm also one of the co-initiators of Talking Shorts. Welcome to this wonderful panel. Just for you to know, we're going to be streaming live online, so also welcome to the online audience. We will be open for questions towards the end of the panel. This panel also might be interesting for you as part of the initiative Be Short Now, which is, actually I think started 3 or 4 years ago here in Torino, which records discussions on topics that are important and interesting for the short film industry, and you can watch online for the rest of the existence of the internet, I guess. And it is hosted on the platform Talking Shorts, which is an online platform for short film criticism. So that was a lot of information, which without much further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to our 3 panelists, because this panel is going to be an informational round discussion on how do you actually get your films into festivals or distribute it even afterwards, even though you don't have anything to do it with and you're stuck all by yourselves doing the rounds. So first, let me introduce you to Leonardo Martinelli. He's a filmmaker from Brazil. His films have been to actually over 300 film festivals and museums, and he has been, which I find very interesting, been voted one of the top 10 new Brazilian filmmakers by Popotel Cinema, so he's one to watch, I guess. His recent film, Fantasma Neon, premiered in Locarno this year and won the Leopard, the Golden Leopard. And it then went on and is still going strong to festivals such as San Sebastian, BFI London Film Festival. It was in Vancouver, in Montreal, in Milano here in Italy, in Uppsala, and just recently in Winterthur and Puff Shorts. So welcome, Leonardo. And he's doing it all by himself, of course. Next up, we have Marija Apcevska, another very successful filmmaker. Welcome. You studied directing in Skopje and then went on to film and media production in Los Angeles. And your films have also been screened at many, many festivals. Your film Bardo premiered in Berlinale Generation back in 2012. And your most recent film North Pole premiered in the Cannes competition this year, and then went on to festivals such as Sarajevo Film Festival, Concordo here in Italy. It's been to Thessaloniki. It's also been to Winterthur and to Puff Shorts, actually. It's been in Cinebe in Bilbao and won 2 awards there. And it's going to Bogota, I believe, in a couple of weeks. Yes, so welcome also to this panel. And last, but by no means least, we have, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Cristina Picchi. Picchi? Yeah, perfect. You're an artist, filmmaker, and writer from Italy, but you're based in London, and you've made a lot of short experimental documentaries. They have also screened worldwide in cinemas and also exhibitions. They have been to festivals such as Locarno, Venice, Thessaloniki, and Clermont-Ferrand. And your film Sima was nominated for the European Film Awards in 2013 and won the Silver Pardino in Locarno also in 2013. Your most recent short film, Unfolded, premiered in Vilnius International Film Festival and then went on to festivals such as Palm Springs, Encounters, Met Film Festival, Izmir, Rhode Island, or Beirut International Women's Film Festival. So, welcome you as well. You. So, as you can already, just from the few festivals I mentioned, there's a lot of short film festivals out there, and you distributed. Well, Cristina, you're the only one who's actually worked with a distributor once, but apart from that, all of you submit and distribute your short films by yourselves. So, I would like to start with a very general question. So apart from the obvious fact that you have to make a good film to get into festivals, what's your experience with the submission? How do you get your films into these big festivals? I think most importantly, how did you learn the ropes? I mean, it's very confusing to know which festivals are which. So how did you manage, generally speaking? I don't know who wants to start. Marija, you're smiling? No? Leonardo?
Okay, I can go first. First of all, thank you very much, Al, for coming, and for the Torino Short Film Market for inviting us. It's an honor to be here. It's a lovely city. And well, I think it's one of the many struggles in beginning the do-it-yourself short film distribution is the know-hows, the know-abouts, the festivals, because many times when it's usually maybe a first film or a second film or you're still students, or even if it's a late career, etc., you have to have information about the festivals, to have information about which festival will require you a world premiere or international premiere, so you can play your cards right. So you maybe don't go to a local festival first, but then you lose the opportunity to have a world premiere in a festival that would help more your career later on. So I would say that the biggest thing that you have to do is to research a lot. The thing that, although submitting the film itself to festivals can be a really quick thing, like you can fill a form in maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, but it's not just filling out the form. You have to know if it makes sense to submit the film at that proper moment. So, and that requires a lot of research and getting to know and to research. Many times you don't know if the festival exists. You have to find out about festivals, especially when you're in the beginning. So one tip that I even have that helped me a lot is to search. I don't know if Italy has this. I think it probably had, because Brazil had one previously. That's like a list of festivals that a film agency might support tickets or to send copies to the festival. That those are usually important festivals, maybe the most important in each country. And then you have a database of those kind of festivals and etc. So, and maybe if your country doesn't have a list as this, to look for these lists in other countries and etc. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Maria and Cristina, you've started being at festivals, I think, back in the day when we at festivals still watched DVDs and submitted them by post or by mail. So what's your experience? How did you get into what's your general opinion on this or experience?
Yes, I just want also to say thank you. It's a pleasure and really an honor to be here. So thank you very much for inviting us. I think for my short, which went to Berlinale, it went through our film agency, who had some scouts coming to gather films from the Balkans or from Southeastern Europe, I think, as I don't know if you call it pre-selection. I think it was even less than that. It was just gathering from that region. And they took my film, and I think they took another film as well from our country. And after that, I just got an email from the festival that it passed the initial stage of selection, that I should submit it further on, and it got selected. But as for North Pole, I submitted myself.
All of them.
All of them as well.
Because I'll ask you in a second, Christina, because I actually checked today, this morning on Film Freeway, and I just ticked the box festival and short film, and it came up with 8,797 results. So it's a lot to get through. Christina, how do you get through all those festivals?
So I came last, but I want to thank you for being here as well. I love Torino. It's always like wonderful to come back. I filmed my last short film here, so I feel a little bit home. So thank you. So I think when I started to distribute my first official, let's call it official first short film, Zima, I knew nothing about distribution at all. The producer took charge to send the films that we shot in this program that was called Cinetrain. That was like a filmmaking joint program, out of which came out 7 short films. So they took care of the main festivals, let's say, the A-list festivals, but then we were left with whatever freedom we wanted to send it around, but I knew nothing about it. So I took the first steps by actually attending a panel that is pretty much like this one, smaller and more informal, let's say, but at the Moving Image Center in London. Back in the days I was living in London, in which some programmers were there to talk about how they were going through the selection process. And I took some notes, but then I figured that not all the hints I got were suitable for my film. And that, I think, is the first self-taught lesson that I got, was to actually look out, first of all, as he said, to make sure that you don't send your film to festivals that require a world premiere after you sent it to other festivals. So there is a hierarchy that exists, and that if you want to get into this festival needs to be respected. But at the same time, after that, to make sure that you actually look out for your suitable audience. So in a sense, I made a scouting around filmmakers that were a little bit more experienced than I was, and look where their films ended up, which festivals, filmmakers that were not just more experienced than I was, but also that I have films that were somehow similar in style or tone or themes to the films that I was making. And based on that, I started to research and to see which one of these festivals could actually work for me too. And I started from there. And so that's the first step that I took into distribution, let's say.
It's actually something, I'm going to jump ahead now, but it fits very well, because it's something very interesting you say, because anybody who works for festivals or programs for festivals will know this, because we always tend to tell the filmmakers, know the festival, know which films they show. But how do you actually know which films they show if you don't have access to the films? So what you're saying is quite important. I think that you also went for the filmmakers and connected with them. Did you guys do the same? How do you know that your film might fit that particular festival if you don't really know the festival before?
I follow festivals, and obviously that depends on how accessible the films are from previous years. And I think in these past few years, it's way better, the accessibility of shorts, than it was before. But of course, you follow the festivals and you have some idea whether your film might be a fit, judging from the previous years, which of course it changes. Like maybe the festival gets a new theme and it gets a fresh eyes. But also I think it has to do, I mean, maybe one thing that we didn't mention, everything we said, was the time when your film is finished with post-production and ready to be submitted, because maybe it's done in spring, but you feel that it's a good fit for a festival that happens in autumn or in winter. So it's up to the filmmaker to decide whether he will save it and wait for that time to submit, or he will start submitting immediately on festivals he wants to, even if he doesn't think it's appropriate, or maybe he doesn't think it's the best fit. Because then what can happen is that you might get selected and then you think, okay, maybe this film was better fit for another festival, and it might be too late.
Yeah, at the same time, I think that watching short films from the festivals you're interested in is fundamental, not only as a wannabe a distributor, but also as a filmmaker, as a cinephile. You can catch many references interesting in contemporary short films, and there are many rich things there. And at the same time, there's this situation that Marija told, that it can be complicated to access some of those films, so you kind of have to be smart about it to see when they get accessible, which sites. One very nice site that it's not so well known, I would say, like, at least like for normal cinephiles, for you programmers surely is very well known, but like Festival Scope. It's a website that from time to time gets available some short films that are in contemporary short film festivals. For example, this year they made available almost all of the Horizonte short films from Venice Film Festival. So from Brazil, I was able to watch almost the complete selection of Venice this year, which is a very nice opportunity. So that only not helps you as a filmmaker, as a cinephile, but also to get to know the profile of the festival and what they're looking on at this moment. Yeah.
And I assume that also Vimeo and YouTube, so many films after a couple of years, they will be online. So I think it also makes sense to check out the program and maybe find some of the films on the platform. I want to go a bit more into detail about how you actually keep track of your submissions. So it's, of course, all about submitting to festivals. And I guess, so I have a few questions. First of all, and I think you're going to show us something great in a bit, how do you keep track of which festival, you mentioned premiere status or policies, so you need to know which festivals have a premiere policy. So how do you keep track yourselves of these things, of submission deadlines, of what festival is suitable for what, where have you submitted before? I can imagine that after like 300 submissions, you don't really know anymore which festivals you have submitted to, and also how often do you do the submissions? So what's your strategy in keeping track of your film and the festivals? Anyone wants to start? Cristina, maybe?
I mean, like the first time I started to submit my film Zima, I was slightly disorganized, I would say, in the sense that I've never done it before, and I didn't really know what would distributing a short film entails. So I started off with the festivals that I thought were more relevant, but then the thing is that the first film I distributed was by far the most popular I've ever made. So at a certain stage, I have to say, it became a little bit overwhelming to keep track of everything and to actually, at a certain stage, it was a full-time job, to be honest, to send out the material, to not just keep track of the deadlines, but also like to actually respond to the programmers and send the materials and be on track and on schedule with all the things that you had to deliver. I guess that I initially underestimated the amount of work that when you are doing well needs to be done. Of course, it's a nice burden to bear because it's worse when your film is going nowhere and then you have a lot of free time. But at the same time, yes, I think I was keeping just Word documents really. And also at the time, it's not 30 years ago, but still I think in the last few years it really changed by the fact that you can upload your film online, and also there were already like platforms like Without a Box, and there were starting to be others as well, but they were not as well organized as they are now. Now you just like fill the form online and then all the material is there, and most of the time you don't have to do much. But at the time I remember I had to like print out forms and sign them and then like burn DVDs and go into the post office, so it was really a lot of work. And I'm sure it still is, and I'm sure whoever of you has done it already knows it. But in that moment of hybrid, let's say, distribution formats, it was more complicated. But yes, I had like Word documents of one for the one that I wanted with the deadlines really, and I was also I signed up to a lot of like newsletters in which I was getting like the deadlines of the months of the the film festivals that I was interested in. So I was kind of adapting it, and I was rushing against time most of the time to try to keep track of it. It's probably better, like, and I did it with the following films, to try to make, once you know a little bit more where you're gonna end up and what kind of festivals you're following, to make like a plan ahead and to have all the deadlines and to set probably a couple of days or 3-4 days a month to actually sort them out. Also because you avoid to do what happens often, especially with the festivals in the US, to have to rush and apply with a deadline that has like often like a much higher fee as well. So it becomes a matter of budget as well to try to keep track and to be on time with the submissions. So yeah, I literally learned by doing, and at the beginning I think it was a little bit more scattered, but then later I started to simply make a plan and trying to follow it month by month, and then being open, of course, to the possibility of finding new things, of being invited to new things, and then exploring and adding new entries to the initial plan.
I mean, I think online submission platforms like Short Film Depot or Film Freeway, they're on the one hand very useful because they just keep reminding you, but I think it's also, you can just click submit, 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 and you don't really know anymore where you submitted. So Leonardo, you went on from Word to Excel, I believe, or Excel. You have, how do you keep track of your submissions?
Yes, I actually have a slide here. They told me to say it, when to show it. It's like a very it's one way of organizing it. It's not universal, like it's the way I do it in particular. I have the festival edition to see how many years the festival have. That's just like an information, the name of the festival, the submission month that I submitted, the submission deadline, the date when they said they would answer or when they answered actually, the dates of the festival itself, if it had a fee, the country, if you already applied, and if you were selected. And if it was selected, I put green. If it was not selected, I put red. And you can do that, and when it's white, it has no answer yet. And you can also use the same platform. For example, when you find out a festival that the submission isn't open yet, you put down, you create one more line, you just put submitted no, so you have it, and you put the submission month when it opens, and you will have the information when it gets there. It's a way of organizing it, because if you don't really keep track of where you submitted, and you're submitting to many festivals, you will eventually forget some of the festivals and submit again, and that can be bad sometimes, especially if there's a fee. And yeah, because some festivals, they don't send you an email confirmation. Most do, but some don't. So it's very important to keep track of that. And one column that I'm due to add, I'm a bit lazy to do that at the moment because it's already done, but it's important to do, especially when you're beginning. It's the premiere column, like to see if this festival requires a national, international, or regional premiere, etc. It's a very useful information to have in hand as well. And sticking to this topic, I don't think it's might be exactly, but one thing that's important as well is that the informations that a festival might ask, it's around the same. Those are not real links, of course, but the festival will ask, like, mostly, if it's not a festival that you have to upload, like Locarno you have to upload, Cannes you have to upload, but most festivals just require a Vimeo link. And you have your Vimeo link, like since I'm Brazilian, I have the Portuguese version, an English version, and a Spanish version, that meaning subtitles. The synopsis of the film in these 3 languages, the name of the film in these 3 languages, a little cast and crew list, a trailer, an SRT, that's a file for subtitles with the time code of the subtitles, and the rest is like bureaucratic. But basically everything that a festival might ask is in this list. So it's nice that you have it organized on the same place, so when you're making your submissions itself, you don't lose a lot of time searching, oh, where is this file, where is this other file? It's all in the same place. You just have to grab a link and do it. So with these informations in hand, you can make a submission in like 3-5 minutes, and that can help you save time, because as she said, researching about the festivals and etc. is something that will take you a lot of time, the decision itself. So submitting faster in that sense can make you save a little time, perhaps. Of course, you have to check a lot to see if you submitted the correct file, but anyway, it's important to have this. I also put it like after the film premieres, if the film is going well, it's nice to keep track of where the film has been, like this is a list of the selections, and you can also save the links of reviews. So those are just quick informations that it's good to have in hand. You know, they're useful not only for distribution, but for your career later on, so you have them saved and organized. So yeah, my method is pretty much like around this, yeah.
So how many years did it take you to gather all the information in the sheet?
A lot. I've been doing this distribution since 2015. So yeah, learning a little bit more each year, yeah.
Marija, you also have an Excel, or how do you keep track of your film?
It's an Excel as well. I wouldn't say it's that well organized though, but I mean, whatever has been said, if it's summed up, would be that it's a full-time job, and I think Cristina said that, because not just submissions, also once you get accepted, and even if you are really well organized with Dropboxes, and I have similar things, links, there would be still at least 5 emails. I think that's the smallest amount of exchange between you and the festival, the transport person, then whoever is hospitality, then a lot of things. So I think that's, of course, it comes with pros and cons when you do it yourself. I would say that the thing that's, for me at least, most complicated is that it takes so much time that you are in a way stuck with your previous project and unable to proceed with whatever you're working on next. Or you decide you will devote your time in the upcoming months, of course, promoting your previous film and traveling with it and doing all the distribution yourself, but at one point you realize that you have to slow it down with that if you want to proceed with working on something new. So I think that's one of the bad side of doing distribution yourself. Well, when you have a distributor, I think that he will take over all these bureaucratical things, and you will be able to focus more on creatively what comes next for you.
Yeah, that was is also one of my questions, because what you talk about is a lot, how much time it takes, and I've done submissions way back when, and I know how much takes to like fill in every application form and keep track. So then, if your film is successful, and your films have been successful, and I guess you have also been traveling a lot. I mean, I've met you a few times now in the last few months. But you also want to work on your next project. So how do you actually have to make a decision, or do you manage to how do you do go about with time management? I mean, you're lucky you're in a residency right now in Winterthur, but what if you don't have that? How can you combine both, or do you actually have to decide what to concentrate on? You're nodding, Cristina.
No, because like I've been thinking about it quite a while, but retrospectively. Because as I said, like the first time was the biggest distribution batch that I've ever had. So I think there's an element of chance as well. I mean, I couldn't predict any of this, and I'm happy for sure. But at the same time, I've retrospectively and a few years later as well thought that it was brilliant to be able, and I strongly suggest probably to everybody, to distribute their first or a film, just to get to know what the universe you're navigating really, how it works. You actually have a direct contact with programmer. You understand a lot about what you're doing just by doing it. But it's mainly it's an office job really. So in a moment in which I felt that I could have really exploited the success of my first short film and maybe come up with a new project, I found myself stuck being the secretary of my film, basically, which was great for a while, but maybe not for so long, because the festival run is at least 2 years, but then if the film is doing well, it can go even longer. So for the first 2 years, I started to work on something else, and at a certain stage I let go. But it was painful to let go, and I couldn't really do it, because then you become a little bit of a control. That happens to me. You become a little bit of a control freak as well, because you've been nurturing your baby for so long that then you try to keep a lot of things open. You try to work with a new project, but at the same time keep on like submitting, or at least like responding to the requests that at a certain stage start arriving on their own. And retrospectively, again, I'm happy I did it, but I realized that I should have let go a little bit earlier, or maybe try to find a distributor halfway through. For sure, not keep on doing it for so long, because I think it's a tricky question, but I think it's a balance in which at a certain stage, if things are going well, maybe you have to detach yourself, take a step back, let the film go, and start working on something new and trying to capitalize on that, on the goodness that you got from your previous film, rather than sitting on it and focusing just on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think, that's a very important point you just made. I'm going to move on to something, because we don't have that much time left. Something also very important, I think many people have probably also question marks in their head: finances. Let's talk about money, because no submissions without money. So there's one thing, you have submissions fees, you have upload fees and whatever, and then you also, when your film gets selected, of course, you want to travel to the festivals, because and most festivals might give you a little bit of money, but they cannot pay for your whole stay. So you need a lot of money also to distribute your film and travel with it. How does the budgeting for you guys work? Do you have, and where does the money come from as well? I mean, you're from a country that in a critical state right now in terms of money, for example, but you come to Locarno and now you're traveling quite a lot. So please fill us in.
Yes, that's a very important issue, because I come from the budget of this film that went to the Locarno was the first film that I did that had a real budget, although it was a very low budget, it was something. My previous films were like no budget films. So with a no budget film, it's also a no budget distribution in some senses, and that for sure can limit where your film can reach, because if you guys are making a film with a budget, save some for distribution. It will be very important later on for sure. Please do that. And because they're not only the major festivals like Locarno, Venice, Toronto, they require a fee, usually a very higher fee. And so you have to really to plan yourself on which festivals, if you have a limited budget, which is the case for most people, I believe, you really have to plan what kind of festival you want to submit, what kind of festival you will try to get to. That comes back to the studying part, to see which films have the profile of your festival. That's why watching the films is so important, because also maybe you don't want to waste money on submissions on the festival that won't take your film anyway. So yeah, it's kind of tricky because you have to balance it with yourself, and also like when you want to travel to the festival, like when you're applying for travel, as I commented before, some countries have lists of festivals that they give support tickets. I know that Switzerland has a list like this. I know that some countries in Europe, Brazil used to have one, but it got cutted by the new government. And so, yeah, I would say to keep track on what kind of festival interests you and to try to cross decks with a juxtaposition of what does your film make sense to, what kind of festivals does make sense to apply your film to.
How about you? You've been doing it a bit longer as well, so I guess you've spent, I mean, feel free also to let us know if you know how much money approximately you spend on submissions, for example. How do you go about budgeting for that?
Yes, Leonardo said, unfortunately, whenever you make a film, you always think about, yeah, we will need some money for distribution, but it's always a matter of tight budget, so eventually those money end up being spent in production. So I haven't worked on a film that had a budget for distribution so far, but you combine your own means and if the film had a successful premiere at a well-standing festival like Locarno, Venice, Cannes, of course you get some invitations and a few waivers, which is good. But of course the travel cost, and another thing, it's not just a matter of money. Some of these travels also overlap in the same time, festivals happen in the same time, and then you're gonna choose what matters the most or what's most accessible for you in terms of finances, in terms of dates and so on. But this goes back to the previous question we discussed. It's also part of your personal process if you're going to distribute it yourself, at least at the beginning. I think that's one of the best things actually, is because all these things, travel and submissions included, will form a certain personal connection between you and that festival, whilst if that's being done by a distributor, you would lose any access and the feeling of how much it costed, because of course we don't really know how distributors do their strategies. So I think this is also a good thing for a director to know how their film has been sent out there.
But on the other, I mean, in the best case scenario, your films will also start. I mean, you also talked about capitalizing from your film. You know, like will start making some money by. I mean, you won an award in Locarno, for example, that gave some money. Like awards are a good way to earn money, but of course that's not the easiest way. But also, because I guess one of the upsides of having a distributor or a person dealing with the submissions is when your film is not chosen for the competition, but maybe for a side program, they can like negotiate screening fees. So do you also capitalize on screening fees? Do you, you're shaking your head, you don't?
No, I mean, like I was about to say before, like I never really had a budget for any of the film I distributed because all the productions were very atypical, let's say. The first one was like this international program that was funding the film, but like there wasn't like any money for us or for the distribution apart from those main festivals I was telling before. The second one was an art residency, so I made it was very homemade. And when it got in Venice, then we got a Swedish co-producer to finish the film, but not to distribute it. So the only time that I actually had a budget for distribution was because it was funded by the Italian Film Commission, and in that case they want you to, like, I think they want you to have like a part of the budget devoted to distribution, and in that case I had a distributor. So the only time when I distributed myself, I never had a budget, but what I started to do was to actually reinvest all the money that the film was winning into distribution. So that's what, like, with the first film for sure, that's what brought me on, at least like fee-wise, and for some of the trips. I didn't go obviously to all the festivals. It would have been not possible and possibly not even very beneficial to actually spend 2 years just traveling from short film festival to short film festival. But I tried to go to quite a few of them, and I think that's surely like a great experience, and it's money well invested in a sense that it's fun, first of all, because like we cannot just talk about the burden of making a film and distributing it. It's actually really good to actually connect with your community and to meet the people, to feel less lonely, because it can be a very lonely journey to make a film and to screen it and not to have a community. So to feel that you're part of a community, that's surely something necessary to keep on going, keep on making films. Screening fees, no. I mean, I remember that for the European Film Awards, when there was like a list of festivals that was screening our films outside of competition, just as part, and I think some of them gave us like a screening fee, but that was just one thing that was like, because we were a bunch of filmmakers, and it was like more of an organized things from the
you
top,
were also
let's
part
say.
of this
But like
organization.
I've never personally asked for a when occasionally I've been given a screening fee, but like I've never asked for it. And yes, okay, that's a great idea. I'll
Coming from a
pencil it
festival,
down.
you should ask for it. Yeah. How about you guys? Do you ask for screening fees? Do you negotiate any money from festivals?
I think we've gotten maybe 3 or 4 times a screening fee, and that was offered. We didn't ask for it. So when it was offered, we were like, yeah, great. But I mean, for other things like European Film Awards, I think even because we got the nomination now, like the qualification, and we've heard that if we're gonna be trying to run for it, then maybe we would need a publicist or, I don't know, people from the other side, and that would also cost money. So those kind of things are also things to consider, even when the film is successful. If it's gonna make the next step, then I don't know how would that be, would it be possible to manage or not?
I think you were going to say something, right, about fees?
Yes, I've asked for submission for screening fees sometimes, and sometimes they give. It's useful for sure, because I mean some festivals, when they select you, they already, oh, here's a screening fee offer. That happened to me like 3 or 4 times, but there were also, it was something that I didn't know. I just learned this film after it won Locarno. So I had a friend who won Berlinale. He came and told me, dudes, when a festival invites you and it's not on competitive, ask for a screening fee. And then I started doing that, especially when it is competitive and has a cash award, maybe don't ask because you're already running for a cash award. But when it's like an invitation to screen out of competition or a special screening, he oriented me to do that, and I started doing that. And the festivals actually started saying, oh yeah, sure, here's 50 euros, here's 100 euros. It's not a lot of cash, but like it helps a lot. It helps a lot from time to time. And yeah, sometimes the festival don't offer a screening fee, and I accept the invitation anyway because I want the film to be seen. But I hope they're not watching this. But yeah, like I always accept, except when I have like a premiere thing, I still have to hold the premiere for this country. Except on these occasions, I always accept invitations because I want the film to be watched. But yeah, when they are able to offer screening fee, it's always better. And when they invite me out of competition, I'm starting to ask them, and sometimes they give. Yeah.
That's also good because maybe those money can then be used for further submissions. Maybe they're not a lot of money, but that's about the right amount to use it for next submission. So
It's a money cycle. Do you guys have any, I mean, distribution also, I mean, your film then has been, you said it has a life of 2 years, which is approximately right, and then distribution also might go on beyond. Like, do you guys have any experience in selling your short films to online platforms, or have you had any sales from your films as well? You're nodding, or have you?
yes, my previous short was bought by Canal Plus. So it was distributed in the French network, and for this, the latest short, we do work with a sales company.
And did you contact them yourself, or did they see your film at the festival and said we're interested?
They saw it at Cinemat in Montpellier.
So I guess it's also very important to, like you said, I want to be screened at a festival. So even if they might not be able to pay a screening fee, if you know people like this. TV stations or buyers like here, a lot of buyers here are watching, are there to still go there and show your film and maybe introduce your film. Speaking of, I mean, this world is quite small, but it's also very important. It's very personal. Do you guys working for a festival? I always get like this question. So does it help if I know you and you will pick my film quicker if I know you? Do you guys talk to programmers a lot? Do you think it helps to know these people, or does it just help in terms of getting maybe a waiver and then being in the submission process? What's your experience with the personal side of this? Anyone?
A tricky question. Yes.
I know.
Well, being honest, being from Brazil, I didn't knew a lot of programmers because sadly it's harder to come down there, so not many European programmers are there. I only met once, like from one Portuguese film festival, and I met him and he told me, oh, your film is in the pre-selection. And then when he told me that, I was like, oh, nice, and I made contact with him and I got his email. And my film ended up not being selected in the festival, but I had his email, so I had his contacts. When I submitted the new film, I emailed him, hey, this is the new work I'm doing, and I sent him, I already had paid submissions, just sent like I already formally submitted, and he was answered really sympathetic and etc. And I think, being honest, I think it's more likely that they pick up your film when they know you, when they know your work, and of course your film is, the film is the most important thing, but I think it's inevitably that people have personal connections, and that's something that happens. But yeah, I think it all, in the end, it all comes up to the film, certainly. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't. I think that contacting programmers by email can be a bit awkward because you don't know the person. But like if you're in the same industry, drinks or an event, and maybe I would approach a person, especially because since I would consider myself a short film cinephile, I know a lot about the films that the person has previously programmed, that I want to talk about it. So that's why I say, like, if you want to be a short film filmmaker, watch short films. I think it's one of the most important things, both as a filmmaker, but also to help to create connections and etc. So yeah, I would say that my perspective is a bit about like that, like trying to get to know people, but at the same time, I don't want to force anything or to be awkward. Yeah.
How about you, Cristina? I mean, you've been in this for a few years now, so does it help you to have these personal connections?
I mean, like, it obviously helps to know the people you're talking to. By knowing, I don't necessarily mean knowing them personally, but like the reason why I was saying that it's worth to distribute at least one of your films is because then you create like a connection which is even just virtual, but you have the email of the person, and then if the film gets selected, even if you never meet the person, but they know you, they know your name, they know the kind of work that you do, and then maybe with your net film, you can just like drop them an email and say, hey, I made a new one, and you know, there's a chance that if they like your work before, they will watch it more eagerly. The thing is that there's like an incredible amount of short films that are made every year all around the world. And it's brilliant that a film made in any country can travel the world as well as yours. But you're in competition with a lot of people. So being known, even just being known as a name and as an artist and you know, having people that know what kind of work you do, it's already something, you know, that they help you to put you on a map, and there's a higher chance that they're gonna be happy to watch your films. But again, like, it's all about the work, because if your next film is not as good, or simply, sometimes I don't think it's necessarily a matter of being good, because it's a word that means everything and nothing. It's just that if it's a fit, I think. And that's why I never really got offended about any rejection, and I got a lot. Because I think it's not necessary, especially with short films, it's not necessarily a matter of like how your film is brilliant. It's a matter, you know, you're part of a program. So how does it fit within that program? How does it work with the other films? How your style as a director, and also the theme you're talking about, is it clashing or working nicely with other films that are going to be selected for that program? So there's a lot of elements that fall into place, but I think that for sure, you know, trying to put your name on the map helps a lot, and to have a direct connection with the people. Also because you can use this you can bring it. It's kind of a thing that you can bring forward. Then if you later work with a distributor, most likely than not, they will have all the contacts and names that they'll need. But sometimes, and this happened when I distributed Unfolded, there were just a few festivals that I had contact with and I thought were interesting to keep on being in touch, and I gave the names and the emails to the distributor, and they brought the word forward for me. So yeah, for sure.
So talk to people is what I get from this. Thank you very much. So we're it's now 4:15, so we're open for questions from the audience, online and offline. So are there any questions here? Don't be shy. Now is your opportunity to ask. I'm also trying, I'm looking here because there will be maybe online questions. No questions. That's a pity. It's a one-in-a-time opportunity to get your thoughts, and also even if you have any thoughts or if you disagree maybe with, because what I would be also interested in, I mean, you've been to very big festivals, so you've been to the A-list festivals, Berlin, Venice, Locarno, Cannes. What if my film doesn't start in Berlin or Cannes? What if it starts at a smaller festival? Do you think that makes any difference?
Yes. Sadly,
How?
it makes a whole lot of difference. Being like, Locarno was my first A-list festival, and my life changed, really. I'm only here because of Locarno, and I'm only in the residency because of Locarno. And the A-list festivals, they really can change your life. Doesn't mean they will, but they really can. So, but at the same time, I'm on the A-list for the first time in 2021, but I've been making films since 2014. So more than half a decade trying to get to those A-list festivals before getting into one. So the smaller festivals, not necessarily smaller, but like I don't like the word B festival, but like the non-A-list festivals, they can help a lot your career. They can help you meet new filmmakers, meet new films, and to get your film seen before you eventually get or know to an A-list festival. And there are also people that make kind of films, like very genre niche films that will never get to an A-list festival, but that doesn't mean in any way that you're not a good filmmaker or a successful filmmaker, because it's all circumstantial. There are festivals that have a really kind of profile of short film they want to pick, and sometimes the films you make, it's not that profile at this moment, but maybe at the next decade it will be. So I would say it's completely circumstantial. But yeah, at the same time, you should apply to these other festivals. Your film probably won't get as much recognized. People won't write you as many emails as they would do when you're on an A-list festival. Having those both experiences, I can say that for sure. But yeah, I think you have to keep trying, keep submitting the film to as much festivals as you can, and strategizing. So yeah, but I would say try to get to an A-list festival. It certainly helps a lot. Yeah.
But keeping that in mind, I mean, maybe they show 1% of the submissions. So it's if you don't get selected at an A festival, don't give up.
And also, if I may add, it's not
sure.
like a closed club that once you're in an A-list festival, all your films are going to be in an A-list festival. You know, like, I mean, it can happen that one of you, and that goes back to what I was saying before. It's a matter of a fit. It's a matter of how good you're working in that particular moment. I mean, I had my first 2 films in A-list festivals, and the third one didn't enter from the main door, and it does make a difference for sure. I mean, like, I would lie if I would say differently. I think it's like, you know, you enter from a side door, and you're not as noticeable as other film in other occasions. But it, you know, you can. It's a place where you can go in and out. There's a great element of chance as well, and I think it's why it's important to just try to keep loyal to your vision and to your path, rather than trying, you know, doing things, trying to get in festivals that can open doors. I think it's the other way around. You really have to keep doing your work, and then it will lead where it leads in the moment when it happens. But like, I wouldn't obsess about it, to be honest.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we actually had this discussion with Leonardo just yesterday, and there was something that my main teacher in my school used to say, like, filmmaking is not 100-meter sprint, it's a marathon. So yeah, of course it's amazing to screen your film at these top festivals, but I wouldn't say that if that happens to you and then the next film doesn't follow that path, you should just all of a sudden give up and that's it. It's happened once, will never happen again. What matters is to keep making what your vision is and to create other films. And yeah, I don't think that it's the only thing that matters, really. I mean, because as you said, that's like a really low percentage of films that go into, and we have been obviously very lucky to get in, but also you can't forget to stay humble, because of course it's a matter of good filmmaking, but even more so of how that film aligned in that year in that program. So that doesn't mean that your next film should immediately follow and then the next one after. So you just keep making films and believe in your desire or your lust for filmmaking. That's at least my view.
Yes, I think for sure, because that's the thing. Not getting, like, in my opinion, as a person who loves watch short films, there are masterpieces that didn't get to A-list festivals. So it doesn't rely, you don't get to be like a canonic filmmaker just because of that. You can make some really good films and never get those in. But what I say is that at the same time, you should try, like you should submit. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't get in. And that's part of the process. We were talking about a short film that was in Locarno, that you said that it's not exactly the profile, but it's a film that I loved, and I wouldn't expect to see in a late festival, but it was there, and it was awarded, and it was a lovely film. But at the same time, I think that there's it. You should apply, but you shouldn't create expectations, and you should strategize your career in other ways. And I don't think that having these laurels necessarily makes a filmmaker or not. It's all about the work, and sometimes it's destined to other festivals, and it can be just as great. Yeah.
Thank you. In the meantime, do we have any questions? Oh, I think you might probably get a microphone. Yes, it's coming.
Hello. Hello. I have a few questions, if you don't mind. So the first one is, we're supposed to strategize, like finding a good premiere, right? Like submitting your film to the top festivals. When do you start, I don't know if the term is give up, and start submitting to the next tier? Or I don't know how to, because I've like, sorry, I don't know if I'm making sense. Like, if you submit to the top, right, and then sometimes if you get in, is that the only time you start submitting to the other festivals? Because sometimes if you submit to the top festivals and the not top festivals, and then you get into you're like the second bracket and you haven't gotten into an A-list, do you reject the acceptance or something? So sorry, so I don't know if I make sense, if the question makes sense.
You understand the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it makes total sense. Well, one thing that you can do if you're applying to the A-list festivals and then you will start applying to some minor ones, but there's still an A-list festival later on that you're waiting for an answer. I don't think it's not something exactly official, but I would say write an email. You write an email to the festival that's an A-list afterwards. For example, random examples. You want to submit to Berlinale, that's in February, but you got selected to a festival that's in December. Okay, then you write to Berlinale, explain the situation as, hey, I got selected to this festival, is my film still in consideration at Berlinale? Perhaps they'll say, no, your film is not still in consideration, then you know, okay, then, and then you accept the one. Or Berlinale will say that it's still in consideration, or maybe they won't answer your email, that's also a possibility. But yeah, I would say it all depends on the situation. And about the first part of your question, I believe that a very good moment to have your film ready to start submission is maybe in September, that you can try Rotterdam, Berlinale, Cannes, Locarno, Venice, and then you basically try all the A-lists, and then you start getting to the other ones if you want to have like a calendar for that. But yeah, I would say that's a way of doing it, yeah.
You want to add something?
Yeah, well, it has actually happened to me with my previous short that I have started with some smaller festivals, and it was accepted in two, or one of them was smaller, the other one was a bit bigger, but then there was some interest from even a bigger or really important festival, and it was really tricky for me to kind of decide whether I should turn down these two. But then you don't really, it wasn't a matter of having a guarantee of getting into this important festival, and that would mean that if you turn down these two, then you don't get into this big one, then you are losing maybe 3 months at least, or 4 months of a cycle of premiering and then just releasing the film out there. So eventually it went to these smaller festivals. I wouldn't be able to know for sure what the outcome would be, but I think if it was for sure wanted by that big festival, I think they would have made stronger, let's say, intention of keeping it, because of course, if you know for sure, or you really know you have strong chances, then I think any filmmaker would keep their film for the big festivals, of course.
I think it's very personal as well, in the sense that you only know how much you work for your film and how long it took to get the finances or to get it off the ground. So, I mean, it's not that the film that came out pretty easily and fast is worth it less, but I'm saying that once you really worked many years, for example, to put something together, then waiting a few months is not a big deal, I would say. So, I mean, in the case of Unfolded, that's what I did. The production got pushed like several times. It took way longer than we expected at the beginning not to film it, it was just 5 days, but to actually really get it off the ground. And in that case, I didn't mind waiting and trying to give it the chances that I thought it deserved to be in an A-list festival. Then at a certain stage, of course, I had to change my strategy and to start from another point, which, I mean, it went well anyway, but at the same time, yes. But that was my personal decision in accordance with the producer and the distributors. But I probably would have done it as well with the other films that I distributed myself. It depends, but I don't think there is a right or wrong answer, to be honest.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, and I have another one.
Okay.
Has fees stopped you from submitting to festivals? The submission fees? Has that stopped you from submitting to a particular festival? And if so, what do you look at in thinking whether I will submit to this one or not submit to this one? Because there's a fee, like a submission fee, and budget for distribution is not big.
Have submission fees ever stopped you from submitting to a festival you wanted to submit to?
Yes, I never applied to Venice. It's too expensive for me because coming from Brazil, 60 or 70 euros, that's half the minimum wage of my country. So for 1 month, so it's very expensive. I never applied to Venice. So in my case, from Locarno, Locarno was my first option and my first appliance, so I got lucky. But I would say it depends on having a budget for distribution and seeing, like, for example, if your film has a chance, if it fits more the profile of Venice or Cannes or Berlinale. So if you have a really limited budget, you have to narrow down your interests, I would say. And also not on your interests, but what if your kind of film makes sense on which kind of festival.
I agree. I would say that if you think that it's a good fit for a certain festival, especially from the A-list, it's money worth investing. And I think apart from Venice, maybe that has a higher fee, all the others I think are pretty accessible, especially if you do the early submission. I think it's affordable, and of course, as Cristina said, it's nothing to wait a couple of months for the most important festivals in the world.
Thank you. We have time, I think, for one more question, if there is one from the audience. No? I can't see any. Okay, then maybe a quick answer, because I think we are almost out of time. Would you like to work with a distributor? And are you looking for one? Please, go ahead. Leonardo.
Well, I don't know. I think it would depend on the distributor. I think that not having to deal with so many emails and so many time for sure would be an advantage. But at the same time, as Cristina told, I'm a kind of a control freak of the distribution of the film. So I want to know where it's going, where I'm submitting. So I would inevitably, if I work with a distributor, I would like to be close to it. I would like to know where it's being submitted, like which one are you choosing to have a premiere in this country, like I don't know the criterions and etc. And I think that it comes with advantages and disadvantages. At the same time that you save time, you lose cash, and because you have to pay. And I don't know. I don't know how much it helps getting selected into festivals once you have like a very big database of lists, because for sure distribution companies, they will always know festivals that you don't know about, and then maybe have cash prizes and maybe would give you a trip, and so maybe you're losing the few opportunities. But after you create a large database enough of festivals, maybe you're not losing that much. And it all depends on how much time you have, how much you're willing to spend, and your film. Yeah.
Marija, how about you?
Yes, I mean, another thing that once you give the film to a distributor, you're aware that the film becomes one in not many maybe, but several. So you lose that personal approach when you send your film by yourself. But in the same time, for me personally, I am at that stage that we going to give the film to a distributor. Of course, a distributor you trust. Of course, a distributor you believe it's going to do well for your film. And I think it also has to be a distributor that really likes the film, because that's the only way that someone will become a stepmother or stepfather to your baby. And you will be then free to focus on your next projects. I'm at that stage where I really like to focus on my upcoming projects. And if I keep doing all the paper or bureaucratical computer work. It's just gonna, yeah. And of course, distributors can, no matter how control freaks we are as directors, I guess we all are, but also they can do good job in a way that you won't be able to do it exactly because of that. They will follow all the dates, they will know festivals, and no matter how good job you do as a director, you can never be as prepared as a distributor.
Cristina, you've had a distributor before. Would you do it again?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, given the possibility of having money for distribution, I don't know if I would invest myself the money that is needed for distribution if I wouldn't have like the budget within the production, let's say, because I know that I can do it myself, and now I have a strategy, and it wouldn't be. But to be honest, like, given the fact that you can allow yourself to do it, yes, for sure. Like, I wouldn't want to go back to actually spend. I regret already having spent too much time doing it myself for so long, because I did it for 3 films, and it's a lot of work. It's like 5-6 years of work. I think I could have made a feature in that time, but it's super useful to do it once, but like even twice, even 3 times. But at a certain stage, I think it's, given the economical financial possibilities, it's even nice, I think, psychologically, not just financially or time-wise, but even like from an artistic point of view, to be able to delegate things that are not necessarily dependent on your abilities. You know, I think it was good to actually have this conversation. I was probably lucky as well. I worked with people that had my same mind frame. That I mean, if I was writing emails, they would reply on a Sunday. So my cultural freak side was totally appeased by that. And it was also a conversation at the beginning. So I brought my ideas of what I was thinking about the film, where I would send it first and later. And I brought all my database with all my names and emails and everything. And we could integrate the 2 worlds in a very smooth way. So to me, it was a nice experience indeed.
No, I'm sorry, because it says -0 minutes on the screen. Thank you very much. I think these were some very important infos for everybody who wants to submit to festivals. You guys will be here, so if you have any more questions and want to talk in person to them, please don't be shy. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Thank you to the online audience, and see you later.